there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. My inspiration for today's card comes from a tea towel, one for drying dishes, and I kind of looked at it and was like, why have I not thought of this? But anyway, to begin, I have taken 5 really light Distress Oxide Reinkers. Now, this is kind of me using what I have, however, watercolor paints would be ideal, which I don't have, or anything really. You could use any kind of inks that you have and just smush them onto the acrylic blocks, or just have a look in your stash, even scribble some markers onto the acrylic blocks. Whatever you have that you can kind of create this look with will work. And then I'm going to add a tiny little bit of water to each one of those dots, and just with a really light pencil marking, I'm going to divide the top into thirds and down at the bottom the same, and then I'm going to do the same on the sides. Now these little pencil markings are just 100% for me because there's going to be kind of 9 little features on this card, and because I can't eyeball things very well, so those tiny little dots that are really hard for you to see are there just so I can, I eyeballed them to begin with, so you could measure them and get them all lovely and perfect, but this card is very loose and free anyway, so that didn't matter to me. So up the top there, to the left I have the colors, and up the top in front of me I just have an acrylic block with water squirted out on it, just plain water. And that is just so that when the color reaches my card, I am thinking, oh, that's a bit dark. I can just reach for some clean water and water it down nice and quickly. And I am also working on a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper. But what I'm doing is just kind of making these mini little rectangles. Now I want them to be kind of really light and not too bold at all. So I'm watering down everything basically. Now this is the black soot color because I don't have any of the grays, and I watered it down significantly obviously because I only want it to be a light gray. There's some yellows, blues, pinks and things, and then eventually I end up mixing together the pinks and the yellows to make an orangey color, and I've also got the little purple color there. There was no rhyme or reason as to where I was putting colors or how they were going down. I was really just having a nice time playing, and in general I could not paint something nicely to save my life. So this is not necessarily something that I'm comfortable with. It is just plain rectangles, and this is about as far as my watercoloring skills go. But that's okay. Even I can manage some rectangles, and I just wanted them to be like really rough, nothing perfect. I didn't want them to be perfectly squared off edges or anything. So, you could do this with any shape, any blotches, any circles. And if you didn't feel comfortable with that, you could always die cut out or punch out some of these shapes and adhere them down as well. So I have made my way through my card, and I'm just going to do my final little rectangle, and I quite like the way that this turned out so far. I was really happy with it, and sometimes when you kind of are happy with a stage of your card, it's nerve-wracking to carry on and potentially ruin it. But never mind, I carried on and let this dry. I let it dry naturally because I carried on looking for the stamps that I wanted to use, but you could definitely use a heat gun as well. Then I have a stamping platform. This happens to be the Tim Holtz one, and I have this stamp set here. Now this big bouquet, you can see it's got all these different leaves coming off the side, all this different kind of foliage. And I did briefly think about cutting the stamp apart, but I couldn't quite bring myself to do it. So that is where I'm going to use a little bit of masking and things with the stamping platform. Now I have just laid down the kind of foliage that I want to hit that pink square in the bottom left hand corner. Then I'm going to take a couple of post-it notes and just mask off because I don't want it to be outside of the coloured area. So then I know that it fits in the right place, and I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx black ink and ink it up and stamp it down. Now don't be too worried here if it doesn't stamp exactly perfectly. I can always go back and fix that later. I just want the main leaf to kind of have the majority stamp. Obviously I want it to be a good stamp, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and you'll see later on we do need to go back and fix up some bits and pieces. So for this card, I just sat down, and while my watercolor panel was drying, I went through all of my stamps and found all these little leaves and foliage bits and pieces that I could see working for my project today. So it doesn't matter at all if you have this stamp or another stamp or any other stamps that you can use. It's not important. What is important is, you know, the little feature that goes into each of the rectangles. So it doesn't even have to be foliage if there's something else that you think would work really well. And then some of these stamps were also standalone on the side. So I was just able to use an acrylic block and stamp them down that way. And then I did actually reach for a couple of other stamp sets here. You can see this one has some beautiful foliage in it as well. So again, I just kind of try it onto several of the rectangles and see which one fitted the shape of the leaf best. And then if need be, I'm going to use a couple of post-it notes. I didn't do that on all of them, just the ones that I thought I needed to. And it's kind of coming together nicely. I must admit that 9 little foliage stamps is quite a few to come up with, but that's okay. I kind of got there in the end, and as I said, it was just a matter of going through the stamps that I had and seeing how I could use them a little bit differently. So again, this one I've done a little bit of masking just to have those 2 leaves there, and you can see there's a little gap in between them. The one in the orange rectangle up the top in the middle, that one definitely needs a little bit of fixing up. And while I'm at it, I will link to any of the products that I can find down below in the description box. And we also have an amazing Facebook group. I will have the link to that down in the description box below. And we have some amazing, creative, friendly people in that group, and lots of amazing card ideas from people all over the world. So come and join that group if you are interested in that sort of thing. And we are nearly finishing up my card. The last one here, I even used this Christmas stamp. And I'm just going to add a couple of the little branches together to kind of make a little posy of twigs. And then that will finish up the stamping portion of our card. And then after that, I'm going to go back in with a fine liner. Any black fine liner will work, and just finish off those little touches that didn't quite stamp perfectly on our panel. Now also, I must say with this that I know some people get frustrated when I don't add sentiments to my cards. I am one of those people who don't always feel like you need a sentiment on the front. And quite often I will make a card, and then when I go to send it out or I give it to somebody, I will put a sentiment, I stamp a sentiment in the middle of the card, and that is what I am okay with. I think making cards is about doing what makes you happy, and so everybody has their own style. Yeah, so I'm okay with not having a sentiment on the front of the card. And sometimes I find that there are occasions where I just don't have the right sentiment. I don't want to say something kind of on the front of the card that stands out. I just want a nice card to write a nice message on the inside. But anyway, to each his own. I've added a black matting layer, and the finishing touch that I'm going to do is adding some gold Nuvo drops here. And I'm just going to fill in some of the little details on only a couple of these foliage stamps. So it felt like a good opportunity to fill in those little circles, so that one kind of came naturally. And then I'm going to go down the one on the bottom left, and believe it or not, these tiny little bits were really easy to fill in, and I didn't want to cover up any of the black lines, so I was being really careful to make sure that I wasn't doing that. And this is just the standard Nuvo drops container. I haven't put it in anything special at all. So yeah, it was kind of nice and easy, and I feel like these wee tiny finishing touches really make all the difference. And then there's kind of the ones like this that I just added them to balance out the card really. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this glitter pen to the center one there, and that kind of wraps up the card for today. I love this card and I love it in real life. It's one of my favorites that I've done. I hope you have enjoyed watching the process, and I hope you give something similar a go. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it so much, all of your amazing comments that are so supportive. So thank you again, and I will see you next time. Thanks, bye.